Hello and welcome to Ed's World. Returning guest, fan favorite Emily, has come back to join the show as we talk about the events of the past few weeks and eventually the past few months if we get that far into the shutdown. Welcome to the show, Emily.
Thank you.
Before we get started today, we actually have a couple of announcements that we need to get taken care of, some of them from my end, and then Emily herself is going to have an announcement herself. First announcement, obviously, is this is going to become a regular program. When I started out this show, I did intend to start doing a lot more interviews and a lot less solo content, but for the most part, I only had the capability of doing solo content for a very long time. But at this point now, this is going to be a regular thing where I have one weekly guest. Next week, we will have Robert from The Generational Gap, as you'll remember from my appearance on their show. And actually, on the same day, I'm going to be on their show again. Links will be on my Twitter and in the description of the video that I do with Robert. So be sure and go over and check them out. Emily, you have yourself an announcement that you'd like to make first off?
Yes, I am currently fundraising for a new therapeutic day school that's set to open in Bristol, Wisconsin. There is no open date yet. We're still trying to fundraise the money to get the ball rolling on this school. The school will serve students with special needs ages 22 to 100. It is being started by one of the gym teachers at my son's current school, and it seems very promising for a lot of people.
That's excellent. That's a good cause. And everybody who's watching this, make sure you go over and check that out. There will be links in the description below this video. And Emily, as long as we're talking about you and your life, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself? We know that we got to talk to you a few months ago when you were on the show before, but it was so topic driven. This is going to be a little bit more laid back. So tell us a little bit about you.
All right. Well, I live in Northern Illinois. I am the mother to a 7-year-old child with special needs. He actually has his own Facebook page. He's pretty popular, more popular than me. If you want to follow him, The Adventures of Super Chase. Excuse me, he has spina bifida, hydrocephalus, and epilepsy. We actually just found out he also has a biotin disorder, which we're still kind of learning about. So other than that, I'm married to a wonderful man, and I'm a receptionist during the day at a doctor's office. I don't have a pretty exciting life these days. So,
Well, I know that I got to ask John about how he got into the alternative media, but you're not really in the alternative media.
I am not.
I know that we talked about possibly you coming on and doing my show while I'm on vacation here in the near future,
We did.
but that has yet to be seen. The government is opened back up, so I can now go and get my passport and we can start getting that
Mhm.
ball rolling. But that's going to be talked about later on in the video. Coming up on this video, we're going to talk about the presidential field, the contenders that are out there, and a couple of the issues that have arisen that go along with the election that's coming up in 2020. We will take some time and talk a little bit about the Covington School and the Gillette ad. We'll talk about those together. As most of you who saw my video already know, I have juxtaposed the two of those together and I have found how they relate and how they're going to change our society going forward. We're going to have a nice conversation about the abortion bill that went through New York State through Governor Andrew Cuomo and what that means going forward. And we will talk about the end of the shutdown. I'm going to teach Emily on the air live what the shutdown actually meant, and we'll talk about what's going on with this going forward.
All I know is it's shut down.
Well, it's not shut down anymore.
Well, now it's not shut down, so everything's fine now, right?
And of course, this is all going to be unscripted. We don't know what's going to happen, and it's going to be all this and more on your favorite hour of listening material. Last announcement I want to make today is the fact that I've decided that we are going to take Ed's World into the audio platforms. I will be signing up for SoundCloud and iTunes for sure, possibly Stitcher as well. Look for links to that to come. It is going to be all of this and more as we go forward. Emily, are you ready to jump into the topics right away?
I'm ready.
So, As soon as the midterms ended in 2018, we suddenly found ourselves into the beginning of the 2020 election cycle. Even before that, when we talked about the Kavanaugh case and we watched everything that was rolling out there, we started to see for sure the fact that all that was campaign ads for Democrats to go and run against Trump and Trump's agenda. The field is filling with people. Do you know who's all running right now?
Yeah, there's a couple of people. I was actually, not that I'm super interested in them, but I was surprised to see that there are a couple people who are 37 years old, and that's only a year older than I am, and I can't believe that I'm at this time in my life where people my age are starting to run for president. Pretty interesting candidates. But I'm going to butcher his poor name, Pete Buttigieg. He is 37 and he's actually gay, which is surprising. He's the first gay candidate, it looks like. And then there's another woman. Let me find her. Tulsi Gabbard. She's also 37.
Tulsi Gabbard's already made big waves going on in this presidential election too, because I mean, she's going to run as a Democrat. She's running from Hawaii as a Democrat, but she's far to the center edge of Democrathood, at least so far from what she said, and it's already seeming like her opposition for the primaries is going to run her into the ground for that.
Yeah.
Excuse me. She made some, if I'm not mistaken, she made some anti-gay comments years ago, and now that's coming back to bite her in the ass over this.
Yeah. Social media.
Yeah. And of course, we've got all of the big names out there. Elizabeth Warren made her famous beer drinking Instagram story. I covered that on this show, and I actually played most of it on my show. And Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is going to be the one, or at least during the Senate hearings, I thought for sure that Kamala Harris was going to be the one to watch. You know, she's young, younger. She's fairly well spoken. She seems to be, at least from what we saw from the Kavanaugh hearings, it seems like she was, you know, kind of vicious as to how she treated Brett Kavanaugh, at least. I don't know if you saw any of that going on. I actually watched the majority of the hearings.
I listened here and there, but I didn't follow it a lot. So.
But one of the things with Kamala Harris that I found interesting when I was reading up on her bio, and, you know, I did my own announcement video for Kamala Harris and talked about some of the issues that she's going to face going through. Kamala Harris has never run against a Republican for anything. She's actually in her first term in the Senate right now, and she was a Attorney General for California before that. But are you familiar with California's election or election process?
I am not.
You understand, around here, like, well, in your state, I'm not sure how it works. I know around here, you usually get the top two candidates from either party, and then you'll have your third parties jumping in as well. So you'll get your binary choice, essentially, but everyone else will be on the ballot that's running. In California, they only put two people on the ballot. And it's not from either, it doesn't necessarily have to be from any party. When they go through the primaries, they tally up the top two people who get the majority of the vote, and those people run on the ticket. Kamala Harris ran for Senate against Loretta Sanchez, filling a vacated Senate seat. And Loretta Sanchez was a Democrat, and they were filling a Democrat-filled seat.
Okay.
So that's going to be interesting to carry out. You have any thoughts on that at all, or?
No. She's gonna have a run for her money because she's never ran against a Republican. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, first off, you're in California, which leans far left, which I'm sure you understand what that's like when you look around you for sure. Illinois is a lot in the same boat.
Oh, we are.
But to the extent that that goes with her never having run, I mean, your election strategy is going to be very different going forward. I mean, in
Right.
California, you're playing to the urban areas, and Illinois, I
Hmm.
think it's completely the same. How much time do your Illinois politicians spend for the state seats or for anything else campaigning outside of anywhere but Chicagoland?
Right.
I mean, I'm
Right.
sure you've seen a few of them around where you are, but I mean,
Hmm.
for the most part, you're still considered to be in Chicago. I'm sure somebody in
Yeah.
Wyoming would consider you to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've got a candidate here whose entire shtick was to play to Los Angeles, Sacramento, and San Francisco for the
Yeah.
most part. And now she's going to try and sell herself to places like, well, here,
Hmm.
or places like Wyoming or Kansas or North Dakota.
Yeah.
Whereas she's always had to run herself as
Right.
who can be the furthest left, who can promise the most free stuff,
Hmm. Yeah.
who can hate the rest of the country more. I hate to say it, but
Hmm.
that's probably a part of the shtick that's going on down there too.
Right.
But it seems that Kamala Harris is going to have another rock in the road that she's going to be taken from. It seems, and I just found out about this today myself, that Kamala Harris apparently has a skeleton in her closet, an affair that went on
Hmm.
years and years ago that possibly launched her political career to where it is.
Hmm. Yeah, I read about that.
What did you think about that?
Well, so it was the former San Francisco mayor, and he
Hmm.
says, "Oh yeah, it was like 20 years ago," and he feels he influenced her career. So, but then I guess it seems like after it ended, she was like, "Oh well, now that I'm a DA, don't do anything wrong or I'll indict you." So, not only did you have an extramarital affair, you're gonna like essentially blackmail this guy about talking about it almost. You know what I mean?
And I do think that does carry on to the way that she's going to carry out the law, or at least it gives the
Hmm.
optics to things that we can see about her. Some of the things that, Kamala Harris is a first term senator. We
Hmm.
don't know anything legislatively about her. And as a first term senator, I said this in the video that I made about her. She's been in the minority party in the Senate for her entire career. She was elected in 2016.
So it's only been 3 years that she's been in this seat, huh?
It's only been 3 years, and there's really no major legislation right now to her name because, for the most part, all that she's done is oppose the legislation that the majority party's been in. She's not been
Yeah.
attached to anything, so we don't know
Hmm.
exactly what it was that she wants to do for lawmaking.
Right. Hmm.
Furthermore, there have been attorneys, Barack Obama himself was an attorney, that have held the office of the presidency, but we've never
Hmm.
had a specific prosecutor be the president. So that'd be an interesting way to look at it because
Right.
I mean the president's office, the president doesn't make laws, even though a lot of people on the left think that the president makes laws. It's the president's job to enforce the law. He's the chief
Hmm.
law enforcement officer of the country. So to have a prosecutor sitting in that's an interesting concept in and of itself, I think.
Yeah. But being so left side, is she really gonna, you know, yeah, this is the law, but what really went on? You know what I mean? Do I make sense? Like, how lenient is she gonna be with these laws as
Well,
a Democratic Party?
Well, as the Democrat Party, yes, she's going to choose which laws that she wants to enforce and which ones that she doesn't.
Hmm.
We ran into a lot of that with the Obama administration. He
Hmm.
chose which laws he wanted to enforce and which ones that he didn't. That's the nature of what the executive order is supposed to be. But furthermore, what weight is she going to put onto laws that she does want enforced as a prosecutor?
Right.
Hate speech laws as far as they go, even though I don't think that there
Hmm.
ever should be anything like that. Or
Right.
laws for Medicare for all. How hard are you going to drum down on
Hmm.
people like that? How hard are you going to drum down on your dissenters for that matter?
Hmm.
in addition to the Democrat field that we've been seeing, because, I mean, we're not hearing anything from the right side, we all assume that Trump is going to run again. Former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz decided that he was going to put his name in the ring, but he's not going to run for one of the major parties, and that has
I
caused
read
some
that.
waves
Hmm.
in Democrat circles.
Yes,
A lot of
he's
people,
running as an independent.
yeah, I mean, he doesn't have any party affiliation at this point,
Hmm.
but everyone is starting to get ready to call him the Jill Stein 2.0.
Yeah.
I don't think Jill Stein really had as much of an effect on the presidency as other people in past and third parties have had, but there are a lot of
Hmm.
people out there that want to link Jill Stein's influence in the election to the reason that we have Trump, and I don't see the numbers to go along with that.
Hmm.
I'm sure you could possibly opine a little bit more on that, being in a more left-leaning area yourself.
Hmm. Yeah.
In all honesty, by looking at the numbers, and I was listening to another YouTuber earlier talk about this, I didn't realize it beforehand before I started listening to that. I mean, Gary Johnson, as the Libertarian Party, numerically took a lot more votes away from the Republican Party, from what I understand, than Jill Stein took away from the Democrat Party.
Hmm.
You look like you're looking at something.
I'm just looking. I have something pulled up about Howard Schultz, and it was just, everything you need to know about him. But it's just basically telling me that he's the CEO of Starbucks. He endorsed Hillary. Um,
Well, it's Seattle. What do you expect from that?
so he supports same-sex marriage.
There's nothing wrong with that, in all
Yeah,
honesty.
no, not at all. No, I don't. That's something I just, love is love. You love who you love. You can't, you know, but I'm a bleeding heart for love. So, no, I thought I saw something. Oh, he was just saying how he just wants American people to win. He wants to see American win, and he doesn't care what party you represent. So, that will
Well,
be pretty interesting to see what he brings to the table. I'm kind of actually interested in what he has to offer.
Well, it's obviously interesting to me to see the thought of a third party go up. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
not bound to the binary or two-party rule that we have going on here, but
Hmm.
the insinuation there is the fact that for the most part, American people aren't winning, and I don't see any numbers that
Yeah,
corroborate that story
winning.
either.
We are not winning at all. And I just, yeah.
How are we not winning? We're unemployment. We're
Mm.
just about at full
Well,
employment at this point.
I don't, not from that standpoint. Like, just, I feel like just we're so split on everything now. Like, I feel like until recently, we all, not to sound super cheesy about it, but like we all work together and we all, I feel like all of a sudden everything is such a racial issue and everything is offensive and everything is just, it's just, you don't want to step on people's toes and you walk on eggshells around anybody because you don't want to make anybody so upset. I mean, heaven forbid, and I feel like in that aspect America is not winning, you
I
know
can understand that entirely. Did they try and tell you when you were, because you're only, what, a year or two older than I am?
I am 36.
I'll be 35 in April, so.
Okay.
Did they try to feed the narrative down you guys when where you grew up, where, we wouldn't even recognize race anymore by the year 2000, or this would all be fixed? And
you know I remember reading, not necessarily that, but I remember, I think it was a Time magazine cover that said by the year 20 something that there will not be separate races because we just all be intermixed. And I was like, oh, well, that's wonderful. And, I didn't, I mean, growing up, I didn't see color. You were who you were. I mean, it doesn't matter to me what you do. I don't understand where the shift happened, you know.
Well, it's like we shifted into it, but then we shifted right
Mhm.
back out of it. I mean,
Mhm.
racial tolerance in the 90s, from what I understand, was at the highest point that it ever was at the
Mhm.
time, obviously.
Yeah.
We had to do was compare ourselves to the 60s and the 70s. And I've
Yeah.
heard my parents talk about that. I'm sure you did as well.
Yeah.
I mean, my mom grew up in Kenosha, and she's told me that right there were race riots, and that's not even that urban of an area.
Mhm. Yeah, my mom actually grew up in Louisiana. So she was there when the first Black students went to her school. So she was alive at that time of life.
I've got to imagine that was almost worse being in the deep south at the time too,
Hmm. Yeah.
and only what 110 years after the Civil War.
Hmm.
I'm sure that that played a big part into it. But I mean, growing up, yeah, like you said, there was no, you didn't see color.
No.
And for you, it was a different story than it was for me. I grew up in a very rural neighborhood. We were talking about this off camera.
Yeah.
I grew up in a
Yeah.
very rural area in northern Wisconsin. There
Hmm.
was until I moved to Kenosha myself. I had met three black people in my entire life. But
Hmm.
you had a completely different experience growing up than I did on that case.
Yeah. Yeah. But like it just, they were just, people to
Well,
me.
and
And
that
maybe it was just me growing up, but they were just my classmates and Samira and Keisha and they were my friends and I didn't nothing like that, you know. I never looked at past anything
well,
other than they were nice girls and we were friends, you know.
well, and that's the same that it was for me. I mean, yes, there were only a couple of them there, but
Hmm.
it wasn't so much that they looked different from us. They acted the same as us. They were
Hmm.
the same people.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm looking at the environment that we have now. I'm looking at the news, and I'm just
Hmm.
wondering if that would even be possible the way it was when we were growing up now. If
Hmm.
if we would have this, especially in a rural area like that.
Yeah.
But even in the more urban areas, I'm hearing calls for segregation from black people.
Hmm.
I never thought for a second that I would ever hear that.
Right. Right. And I don't understand what changed, you know? Like I know that there are people out there who are racially motivated. Is that what I want to say? Like
Hmm.
they only want to be with their race, but that's not everybody, you
No,
know.
it's not.
Don't dismiss this person because of what you hear. You know, it makes me sad.
And you're out in the suburbs. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in Milwaukee myself too. So
Hmm.
I do see a level where it's. I don't know if I want to say worse, but it's more polarized in places like the inner city of Milwaukee or possibly in the inner city of
Hmm.
Chicago versus some random west suburb like Elgin or something
Yeah.
where it would be a completely different situation.
Hmm.
Would that
Right.
would that be something you would concur with or
Yeah, I would, because I think with richer neighborhoods, it's going to be a lot different with what you see. Like um, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh man, it's right on the tip of my tongue. Just, I think in more, like I live in Round Lake and we are a more middle class town. I work in I work in Libertyville, which is a more upper class town, but you'll see more race diversity. That's the word I'm looking for. There's more, I think there's just more diversity where where I live than there is in Libertyville, where it's mostly doctors and lawyers and CEOs and presidents of companies.
I've never seen that side of Libertyville, but I've only ever driven through there, so
Oh,
you can talk about that more than I can at this point.
yeah, yeah.
Well, that went a completely different avenue from talking about
Right.
Howard
We totally
Schultz.
segued.
But I mean, that's what I have to say about Howard Schultz. I mean, I'm interested to see what he does, and
Yeah.
after reading the Twitter comments, I'm interested to see what the general public has to say about him and
Hmm.
what's going to happen with him going forward. I don't think Styx was wrong. I was listening to his show before we came on the air, and I think that this might be just an ego project. I don't know if he's actually going to be serious about not, but
Yeah.
I mean, in the addition to that, I don't have anything else to go with on the topic. Do you?
Hmm. I don't.
Let's move on as long as we're talking about society and talk about this Covington story and the Gillette ad that happened right before that, because I saw a big amount of parallel between the two of these. I don't know if you saw my
Hmm.
Sunday video or not.
I have not seen your Sunday video yet.
I talked about the parallels that happened between these two, but um, you had brought up the Gillette ad, so why don't you introduce that?
So I saw the Gillette ad, and let me bring up my little notes here. Um, I am very both sides of the fence with the Gillette ad. Um, I actually liked the ad for what it was trying to say, but I don't really want to see men unmasculate themselves. I mean, I what I don't want a girly man. I want a manly man.
Well, I mean, I've seen the pictures. I don't know that I've ever met your husband, but I've seen the pictures, and I mean, with an epic beard like that, I don't see
I
a lot of
know.
Gillette products in your house, but
I know. It's getting off subject really quick. We were talking about this t-shirt. There was a t-shirt with just like the women's bathroom sign. It said my mom, and then there was a woman in it with a cape that said your mom. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make this for Chase. So he drew me a picture of a face with no beard. He says your dad, and then he drew a picture of a guy with a beard and it says my dad. So we're gonna make that shirt for Chase too. But I back to the Gillette ad. I really feel like what they were I see what they were trying to say, but at the same time, I think there's things are worse now because you have social media and the bullying is just worse. These kids are just mean, and I think because of social media, that's why, because you're hiding behind this keyboard talking junk about your classmate, and you
Mhm.
don't have to worry about being face to face. I don't, and I've actually talked with this with my high school classmates. I mean, yeah, we gave each other crap, but we were never ruthlessly mean to each other, like some of the things you hear now. And it's just, I feel like it's I think, but teach your boys to be kind, but don't teach them to be so unmasculine that they can't stand up for themselves. And I feel that has to go along with the bullying, that these kids don't want to stand up for themselves anymore because they don't want to, don't fight people, just be nice. There comes to a point where you got to let your kid stand up for himself without consequence. You know what I mean?
I do. I mean, in the interest of foreshadowing, because this is where I drew the parallels with the Covington case. You are right, and I had a conversation with my late best friend's sister um, when we were when we were preparing for his mom's funeral. My best friend passed away when I was 26, but I remained close with their family.
Mm-hmm.
I actually was a pallbearer for his mother, surprisingly, just this past summer. I don't know why I said surprisingly. That's completely not surprising with the history I've had with that family. But um, and Deidre said exactly the same thing that you just said. I mean, I used I used my best friend as a talking point a lot when I talked about the
Mm-hmm.
Parkland shooting when I started my channel, because of
Mm-hmm.
the fact that, I mean, they made the accusation and it was credible because they had been bullying him for so long that people made the accusation that he had said that he was going to come in and shoot up the school, and people believed it because just of the way that he was treated. And at the
Mm-hmm.
time, again in the early 2000s, it ended at school. We got in my car after school. We went back to his mom's place and we played video games, and nothing ever happened again. We didn't think about, well, we thought about a couple of the girls in our classes because we were teenagers, but we didn't think about what was going on in school, and we didn't think about the people that we talked about. We didn't talk about the
Right.
people who had pushed us around or anything like that. I mean, at the time of the event that happened, we talked about it because, we were making sure that everyone was okay, nobody was going to get hurt or anything like that. But for the most part, by the time that we went home, the bullying ended. I was in
Right.
the victim class of the bullying class, and I turned out fine for it. I challenge some of these parents that think that being bullied is automatically the worst thing for you, especially when it's happening at a younger age. I think it needs to stop when you're getting older, but it's a big thing that helps teach us self-restraint when we're younger. If the bigger
Yeah.
kid comes and takes the ball away from you when you're 7 and then you go back and you take a shot at him, you're going to lose recess for a couple days and there aren't going to be any real consequences to it. But once again, it ended at school. And
Yeah.
now you're right. There was one scene in the ad that I thought that you brought it up. I wanted to talk about it in my video about the Gillette ad, but it got cut for time constraint. Was the fact that they showed the text message, which shows that this doesn't end in school anymore.
Right. It does. It just continues, which you can see why, kids get so down on themselves because they're getting text messages all night saying blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe kids at 13 shouldn't have Facebook and Snapchat and a cell phone. I mean, I didn't have a cell phone until I started driving, and it wasn't like a fancy cell phone either because it was 1998. I mean, but I had a pager. You could send a message on, like it would read out words, but I don't think anybody sent me bullying text messages on my pager. I'm really dating myself, aren't I?
You're only a couple years older than I am, so you're dating me as well.
So, but I actually, the part in that ad where all the dads are standing by the girl saying boys will be boys, and there's the two boys fighting. And
That was acceptable, and I still think that would be acceptable at the age that those boys are.
the wrestling, sure. I mean, don't kill each other. And then when it escalates into something bigger, that, I mean, but boys need to be boys. Stop making them frilly, even though boys are gross. I have a boy. He's gross.
Well, I looked at that. I had a lot of people that were pushing me to make a video about that when it first happened, but with the fact that a bunch of people were entering the presidential race at the time and the shutdown was still going strong, that got cut for a time. Just a couple weeks later, we had the Covington case out of the March for Life happen to us, and again, people wanted me to make a video on that right away too, and I waited to do that. But as I waited and started listening to more and more of the pundits talk about the Covington case, I couldn't help but sit back and think about the Gillette ad and the fact that both of these things are happening at the same time. I don't think the Covington thing was planned. I'm not that tinfoily. I don't have that kind of hat on my head right now. But on the same time, the way that BuzzFeed and the rest of the Missing Link media and the mainstream media themselves jumped on this story, to me, it was them trying to make the message that, okay, we need to bring this to the front of the spotlight because this is going to be something that forwards our narrative. And I think that the Gillette ad coming out when it did is a part of that narrative that they're trying to put forward to us now in the political wake of our country and what's going to be going forward. I'm sure you've looked at social media not that long ago, and you've been looking at it over the last year. What's something that you haven't seen out of media firms, out of celebrities, out of anybody else who has a big name on social media? What is one topic that you haven't seen for the last year that used to be a big thing that all of these celebrities like Lady Gaga or Mayim Bialik or people like that would always talk about?
Well, like Lady Gaga used to be very big, LGBTQ, and I'm sorry that I probably got that acronym wrong, but she was very heavily promoting that and supporting that. And I really don't feel like ever since she did that movie with Bradley Cooper, it's like you don't even hear about the good things that she does anymore for them, you know? I mean, she probably still does. We just don't see it because the media doesn't show us that.
Well, there's that. But one of the things that I've noticed when following on Twitter and the Facebook fan pages and the Instagrams is they're not talking about bullying anywhere near the level that they used to.
Mm, yeah, you're right.
That used to be a daily thing for some of these celebrities. Lady Gaga was the one
Hmm.
I brought up because
Well, yeah, yeah.
I remember when she was going to be doing the Super Bowl halftime show, and all the conservative pundits were flipping out about it because they thought that this was going to be some anti-white male, anti-Republican, anti-thing, and that's not Lady Gaga's thing. I
Yeah,
don't
no.
disagree with her personal politics, but personal politics aside, she's a very inclusive person, and I
Hmm.
I couldn't see her going out and alienating half the country. That doesn't seem like her thing at all. But
No.
after
No, and her halftime show was amazing.
it was, yeah, it was very inclusive in a time that, like you said, we are polarizing in our country. But I
Hmm.
started to realize the fact that all of this talk about bullying stopped after the
Hmm.
Parkland shooting.
Yeah. Now that you've said that, it's true.
And I went out on a limb on my video and I explained the fact that we heard a Cuban American girl with a shaved head get on stage and admit the fact that she was the major bully of the kid that came back and shot up the school. And then all of a
Hmm.
sudden everybody turned silent on the topic, where you couldn't go onto Twitter for a day without hearing about it before.
Hmm.
I think that things like, honestly, when I first saw the Gillette ad, I thought that it was just a virtue signaling point for Gillette. I thought that what they were planning on doing was going out and trying to demonize the entire Me Too movement in the wake of the fact that the majority of the mudslinging that's going to be out there for the next 2 years is going to
Hmm.
be directed at women. I mean, you've seen the presidential field: Elizabeth
Hmm.
Warren, Kamala Harris, Tulsi Gabbard, and there are a host of others, Kirsten Gillibrand. There are a host of
Hmm.
others that want to jump up there and do the same thing on that.
Yeah.
So that's where I thought that it was going when I saw the Gillette ad. But then I realized something with the Covington case is that even though that video was widely debunked, they're still trying to promote this as the fact that the aggressors and the bullies in the case were these straight white males. And then I
Hmm.
went back and I looked at the ad again. And now we're sitting here saying boys will be boys, and all these parents, boys will be boys, will be boys, will be boys, and a line of barbecue grills that I would
Hmm.
love to have in my backyard,
Yeah. Yeah.
are continuing to say this as these kids are sitting here wrestling on the ground. And I think the implication that's going on is that when kids fight like that unchecked, like you said,
Hmm.
when boys do need to be boys, when they fight like that unchecked, when they're the aggressors like that, the implication from Gillette is that if you let them do that, they're going to grow up to be the scumbags that perpetrate the Me Too movement, which further
Well,
carries on the narrative that I think is being carried by the Covington case that, again, when the bullying stopped being when the bullying stopped coming from a straight white male, they stopped talking about it, and now they want it to be straight white males again so they can talk about it again. Did I lose you? All right, it looks like we lost Emily here, so we're going to hang tight here for a second. If I had some super chats to read, I would read some super chats, but we're going to hang tight here. We're going to see if we can get Emily back. All right, Ed's World listeners, sorry for the technical glitch there and the jump cut that you see there. We had some technical issues go on there. But we are going to jump right back into it. We were talking about the fact that you haven't seen bullying so much on social media anymore, and the fact that now we are going back and trying to paint the straight white male as the aggressor in bullying, and the kids that go unchecked as the scumbags who grew up to perpetrate the Me Too movement. And now we're going to jump back into it.
Oh, yes, that's where we were. I think there's letting boys be boys, but there's not teaching your boys right from wrong. And I think that's a big problem today. You know, it's fine to let your boys be boys, but at the same time, you got to teach your boys to be kind and respectful and good citizens. And it doesn't have anything to do with where you come from or what color you are. You need to teach your children to be good people. And if you're not going to teach them that, they're going to go on to be scumbags of society.
No, and that's completely understandable. The political aspect that I saw, though, like I said, was the fact that this is coming out right now, and then they're jumping on this other story. I don't know how much you know about the Covington story because we haven't talked so much about it. We talked more about the Gillette ad, but the fact that they're jumping on it and still trying to forward this narrative completely as a way to push the idea forward that we were talking about before. What do you think about that?
Um, I only caught bits and pieces of the Covington issue. You know, that when it first came out, it was, oh, these white boys from this Catholic school were getting into the face of this Native American veteran, and they were, you know, calling names and this and that and the other. Well, and then 2 days later, we get a fuller story of the fact that they weren't there. They were watching what happened. It was actually the Native American man getting up in their face, and that just, you know, goes back to, well, what are we going to believe here? We can't. The media just doesn't want to give us the news. It wants to turn us against each other, you know?
But they want the story to be front and center too, even though it's been widely debunked. That's what blows my mind about it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're giving credence to their lack of credibility, and they're still trying to forward the same narrative. I feel bad for the kids and their family. I mean, they're getting bomb threats.
That's not fair. And see that, but here we are again. How are you going to bully this teenage boy you don't even know? I mean, come on. And that goes back to social media and why that's the bad part of social media, you know, is that you can sit behind your keyboard and be a keyboard warrior without any consequence.
What about the fact that it's adults doing it to 15-year-old kids?
Well, then there's that. I mean, and this is why I don't know what's going on in the world, because I don't watch the news, because I don't know what to believe.
You don't want to watch the news. That's
that's
part of why I do what I do too. But you know, I look at how I end my show. Never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. For so long, we've been fed one set of facts, and we've been told that we have to accept it the way that it is, and that's the only source that we have. And now there's so many other sources. There are people like me that do commentary on things and try and integrate the facts together and show the real picture of it. But there are other people that are independent that are actually doing on-the-ground reporting, and they're doing a better job of the seven-figure salary talking heads that are on CNN right now.
Yeah.
And the talking heads that are on CNN right now are releasing the information about these kids and their school and their teachers and their families, and getting that wrong even. They doxed some completely different person about that.
Yeah. Well, and then the media just wants you to see what they want you to see.
They want you to see boys will be boys, will be boys, will be boys. And, hey man, that's not cool, and this is all unchecked. and this is what this is going to turn into. You're going to leave these kids bully unchecked, and then they're going to go assault some Native American guy at the national monuments.
Yeah. Because that's everybody's agenda.
Well, that's what I saw on that. If you don't have anything further, I don't know where we're going to land on time anymore because we spent 10 minutes trying to fix technical issues. But let's move into this abortion bill that came out of New York. And as a parent, I'm sure that you've got something else to think about this, etc. It was last week, and this was something that took over the news, of course, after everything was debunked on the Covington story. Governor Cuomo signed a bill into law in New York State stating that it is legal to get an abortion in New York State up until the moment of birth. It is still considered to be an abortion. And this has drawn ire from talking heads on the conservative side. This has drawn great praise from people who are for abortion rights, obviously. And it's even, I think, pulled some people away from that side of it as well. What are your thoughts on the idea there?
I think it's horrible. I and I'm pro-choice. You do what you want to do with your life. It's not my business. It's not my decision. That's you. But 24 weeks gestation is always said viability. So at 24 weeks, there is a good chance your child is viable and can live outside of the womb if born prematurely. And then, of course, every week, the viability chance goes up and up and up. I feel that, you know what, these mothers don't want to have this baby and they want to get rid of this baby 24 weeks plus, make them have a C-section, make them sign away their rights. It just makes me really mad because there's a lot of people out there who want to have children and can't. And then you're just, I'm very, it's a very touchy subject for me.
Well, to what you said too, at a certain point, especially if there's viability, have the C-section or even carry to term at that point. Go up for adoption. There are a lot of people out there though that want to say, well, there's so many kids in the adoption system already, and you're just going to add more, and it's going to be hard to adopt these.
Well, that's a whole nother topic for another show, because the reason there are so many kids out there who can't get adopted is because they want you to sell your firstborn child to adopt another, because they don't make it easy to adopt a child, and that's part of the problem. Don't make it so hard, and more people will be apt to do it.
Get the government out of the way. That's something that I've been saying.
And there's that.
Well, I'm sure that a lot of that is government red tape that needs to go through there. I don't know what the process is, obviously. You being closer to the medical field are probably closer to it than I am and opine on it more. But the other side of that is there are children in the adoption system that can't get adopted. And it's hard to get people to want to adopt the children that are out there. It's not hard to get a baby adopted. It is harder to get
a 7-year-old
child adopted. Yes, I will grant that. I will grant the opponents or the supporters rather of this bill that yes, it is very hard to get a 7-year-old child that's already in the system adopted. There are waiting lists for people to adopt a baby.
Right. So here's the solution to that problem.
Yeah. A newborn. Yeah, that's going to go right now. That's going to happen. For the same reason that you were saying, there are couples out there that want to adopt a baby, that are willing to. They can't have children. They want the full parenting experience, and they don't want it prepackaged.
I feel this is such a slap in the face to people who just can't have children. It's disgusting. It really, and I try not to let my feelings get in the way. And like I said earlier, it's your life, your decision, but at the same time, it's hard to realize that this is okay. That people think this is just fine. Sure, whatever. You're 30 weeks pregnant and you don't want to, you decided at 30 weeks, this isn't what I want to do. So,
What's full gestation? Remind me. You've been through it.
um, and when I was pregnant with Chase, it was 37 weeks, but I think they've upped it to 38 or 39 in the past 7 years.
I don't think we get a say in that.
Yeah, well, yeah. They're gonna come when they want to come,
I was
but
gonna say I physically don't have experience with this, but I don't think we get a say in that.
no, yeah. But I guess obviously the longer you cook him or her, the better chances are.
Well, I think this would be an interesting topic that for you to talk to too, because like we talked about with the Alfie Evans case. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like from what you said back then, and it was almost a year ago at this point, the pressure was kind of there, given the fact that that your child has spina bifida. The pressure was
Mm-hmm.
almost there a little bit for you to fall in the same thing, and then especially if we fell into the medical system of the
Yeah.
UK, the pressure would have definitely been there.
Mm-hmm.
Because you knew before he was born that this was going to be a thing, right?
We did not know he had spina bifida until he was born. He actually he has what's called a Chiari malformation, and
Okay.
because of his defect, his cerebellum is pulled down and tucked under his brain.
Okay.
At maybe 32 weeks, they said, we can't find a cerebellum, and you have to have an MRI, and he might not even have one. So I had an MRI. They found it, and they said, well, it's small and misshapen, and he might have motor problems for the rest of his, like gross motor problems for the rest of his life. And it was about 33 weeks, and they said, well, you have a week to decide if you want to keep your baby or medically abort your baby. And I'm like, what? Well, no, I've gone this far. We're going to love him no matter what, cerebellum or not. So,
Well, and that's exactly it. I mean, you're finding out at late term that there are going to be medical complications, and
mm-hmm,
now this whole thing with Cuomo in New York, it's you don't even have to find out there are going to be any complications to it. It's just a matter of personal choice.
mm-hmm,
Cuomo came out and said in a press conference about this the fact that the reason that they're doing this, the reason that they're signing this into law is because the future of Roe versus Wade is uncertain at this point, and he wants to make sure the fact that New Yorkers can still have access to an abortion no matter what happens on the federal government. And that's the argument that I've been trying to make ever since they first started threatening Roe versus Wade.
mm-hmm,
If let's say that they convened, that they got the case through, and Kavanaugh decided to change his mind tomorrow, and they decided to hear the case because they have to have, I believe, a 5-4, or I think they have to have 4 people sign on to it to hear a case in the Supreme Court, and they only got 3 people. It has already gone up to the Supreme Court level since Kavanaugh was nominated. And Kavanaugh chose not to hear it, so it died before it got to the Supreme Court. But let's say that changed and they decided to hear it, and within a week they decided to overturn the decision of Roe versus Wade. That just kicks it all back to the states, which is the point that we've been trying to make ever since this whole conversation came out.
mm-hmm.
This is not good. I mean, Illinois is not going to is not going to outlaw abortion because Roe versus Wade went down. If anything else, they're going to pass a law like Cuomo did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It makes me so mad.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, even with everything, like I said, you chose to carry a child to term, and the option was there for you. That's incredible, and the fact that there are people out there that, oh well, I can't do this anymore, and it's a minute before I'm supposed to give birth, and I can still do this.
Yeah, no, you've come this far. You can just have that baby and go home. So they will find someone to love that baby more than you probably ever could. Don't. I just don't. You know, I just don't understand people. Like, why would you why would you go that far and decide, yeah, end it? No, 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 no. Yeah.
Well,
It's just hard. It's hard to understand, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I understand, like, again, very early term, where you could see that, or, if it was in the case of a rape where I can't carry this baby or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with it. As I've gone down this alternative media journey, I've been slowly being pulled more into the pro-life camp. I still
Mm-hmm.
consider myself to be firmly pro-choice, but I'm
Yeah.
waning a little bit as I go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, if there's if it wasn't me and someone was in the situation I was in, and they just knew they couldn't live that life, I understand. It's a hard life to live. It is a hard life to live. But for a person who has a normal pregnancy with no issues that decides at 32 weeks, well, I'm done with this. I've decided I don't want a baby anymore. That's wrong. That is absolutely wrong.
It's barbaric, and it's seeing stuff like that is what's pulling me further to the right into the camp of pro-life,
Mm-hmm.
because of
Yeah.
the fact that there's no regard for human life once you get to a certain point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now that I've completely blackened your soul, in the interest of time, let's move on and talk about the end of the shutdown. Earlier on in the week, on a Saturday, no, it wasn't on a Saturday, it was on a Friday rather. Earlier on a Friday, President Trump came out to the Rose Garden and made an announcement that they have come to a deal in which the government will be reopened. It was heavily explained that this was going to be a temporary opening. The stopgap bill that opens the government back up only lasts for 3 weeks. And in 3 weeks, because Nancy Pelosi said that we need to get to the negotiation table and we need to have the government open to get to the negotiation table, in 3 weeks, if they have not come to a decision that everybody can agree on, then we will go back into our government shutdown land. Where do I need to start for you? Because you said that this was going to be your weak point on the show.
Just start wherever you want, and I will try to give you my opinion.
As I mentioned on my channel when this was all starting, before the government shut down, all of the major departments were already funded for. I think they were funded to go up until the point that we're going to be facing another government shutdown. I think it goes further. Excuse me. If I'm not mistaken, all of the major departments are funded through February 21st. But a lot of what they deem to be non-essential employees, which I would hate to work for a company that calls me non-essential. I don't know how people in the government do it. I know they're getting great benefits and great pay for it, but man, I would hate to go through life thinking that I'm non-essential.
My husband works on the Navy base, and he's considered non-essential personnel, but he still got paid. You're essential personnel? I apologize. He's essential personnel, so he does not fit that category.
Oh, I feel like I don't know how he feels about being on camera. I feel almost he could opine on this a little bit more than you could. I understand that entirely. Thank you, husband. But yes, at this point, all non-essential personnel went into a furlough where they were either told not to come into work or they were asked to work without pay. And this includes people, this apparently included TSA agents, which must have changed.
Heard about that.
That had to have changed since I made my first video on this, because when I read the Newsweek article that was explaining what was going to happen during the government shutdown, the TSA was on the list of departments that was funded. So that has apparently changed from the time that the article was written into the time where the shutdown actually happened. But many of these people were expected to continue to come to work under the government shutdown, and they were going to get back pay. Everybody got back pay from the fact that the government was shut down. And that was the end of it. Now, with the fact that this is opening back up, yes, these checks are going to start going back out. That was a big thing on Twitter with the Democrats who were talking about the shutdown. Was the first thing that they said was, this person's not getting paid, this person's not getting paid. But, I mean, we've established now that you come from a federal government family here. If you miss a paycheck, you're not doomed. From what I understand, government pay is a very good paying job. Especially if you know that you're going to be getting that paycheck in the near future. I know there are some families that have government employees that are kind of doomed, but that's more on their spending habits. It's not for the lack of money. It's the fact that they spend it as soon as it gets in their hands. I actually know a family personally that's like that. But for the most part, a family that has a federal government employee is not going to be doomed from missing one paycheck, especially when it's going to come back at the end of everything.
Yeah.
Nobody was starving to death over the government shutdown, and if they were, it was their own fault. I'm sorry to say that out loud on air, and we're demonetized. Where did I want to go with that after we went on to the shutdown? The shutdown was brought forward because there were spending bills out there. We don't have a budget anymore. I don't know what happened where we stopped having a federal budget. That happened sometime during the Obama years, where we, instead of having a budget, we continually passed spending bills so we could spend up until a certain point. That happened last year when DACA was set to expire, and we had the end of our spending bill was coming up. I did a video on the omnibus package that came out of that. But the spending bill, the president insisted the fact that after the omnibus package went in, that closed the gap that we had coming up at the time. He insisted that he was not going to sign any other continuing resolution, omnibus, or stopgap that did not include funding for the wall. At the point that we were coming, there was no continuing resolution that was going to have wall funding coming up, and the president refused to sign any of it. At the 0 hour, the shutdown happened. If I'm not mistaken, the government ran out of money on December 21st at midnight, and the House of Representatives passed a bill that had the $5.7 billion in it and sent it over to the Senate to get the votes on it to keep the government open. Because Mitch McConnell chose not to use the nuclear option, he needed to have 60 votes in order to pass the continuing resolution and keep the government open. At the time, there were 50 Republicans in Congress because I don't believe that John McCain had been replaced yet. So he could not get the votes to pass the bill. The bill failed. The government ran out of money, and we got to sit here and listen to this. So that's your shutdown lesson.
Oh, thank you. Can I switch to my phone really quick because Brian needs to go to a meeting?
Okay.
Sorry.
That's fine. Sorry for the delay again, Ed's Blog listeners. We are back again after some other technical issues, and we're here to finish out this conversation. I just got done giving you a lesson on the shutdown and what we have going forward into it with the 3-week stopgap that was gone through the Congress. Did you have anything to say after that?
Oh, you were talking about how, people need to prioritize and, budget themselves if they're living off government money. And I do agree with that.
Well, obviously you're not going to go into the numbers, but I mean, you can agree with the fact that having a federal employee in the family, that's not a low paying job by any means. And that's the same for anybody, whether it be the postal worker, the TSA worker, or anybody else. Government pays well. They pay very well, in fact.
Yeah.
Going into this now, obviously the stopgap doesn't include the funding for the wall. Otherwise, it would be going on longer than 3 weeks. Do you think it's wise strategy at this point to try and use those 3 weeks to negotiate, or do you think they're just going to throw it back in his face?
I think it'd be a good idea to negotiate while we are back in with these 3 weeks, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, there's another twist to the story, and from what I understand, from what I've been listening to all of this, is the fact that radio personality Rush Limbaugh actually brought the idea forward. As far as I can tell, I can't find any source that precedes any of that. The idea is the fact that the president has the power to use money that's unallocated in certain Department of Defense departments in order he can use it as an emergency in order to fund pretty much anything that he wants. This was a power that went into place after the Nixon resignation because Democrats in Congress didn't believe that there was ever going to be another Republican to ever run for the presidency again, or at least be able to win the presidency ever again. That was obviously an opinion piece that stated that, but I do believe the idea that goes on behind that. What he can do is he can go take money out of the Department of Defense and use that to build the border wall. Unfortunately, that sets a terrible precedent going forward because President Harris or President Ocasio-Cortez, God bless our souls if that ever happens. There are people that actually want her to run for president now. They want to change the Constitution so she can.
And I only know bits and pieces of that woman, and I'm still shaking my head. Like, I can't.
I joke with my alternative media friends that that's my future wife.
Ah.
And they all rib me back for it.
Yeah, well, don't let her talk anymore, okay? If you guys do end up together. Boys will be boys.
But like a President Warren or President Harris would have the exact same opportunity to do the same thing. And, what happens when the emergency at this point is, climate change or redistribution or something like that. I mean, why would you set the president on a very small amount of funding that, compared to the $4 trillion government that we have out there, $5.7 billion is gone in a couple of days in our government. I don't think people completely understand that, especially the people that are making the laws. But he is threatening that if this goes on into the 3 weeks, that he's going to go out and use that power. And I don't know. There are a lot of people that like to accuse the president of using Fox and Friends and Rush Limbaugh's show as basically his method of policy prescription, but I don't necessarily know that he got that directly from them, but I bet you a policy advisor heard it and said, hey, you could do this.
Yeah.
I don't think that we need to be using emergency funds to build a wall. I think this needs to be done legislatively. But the fact of the matter is, obviously, I think he's using this as a stick to make sure that they come to the table.
Right. Right.
What are your thoughts on any of this? I've been talking for the majority of all of this, obviously.
Because your friend over here has no idea what's going on. No, I don't think that. Well, I agree there needs to be something done about between America and Mexico, whether it be a wall or better border security. I don't think that he should be using that money from the Department of Defense. I don't think that's what he should be using that money for, if that makes sense. I think they all need to sit down and really hash this out.
Well, the thing that went on with the shutdown was the fact that the president came out and he laid out the concession, because this is, first off, $5.7 billion is not going to build 100 miles of wall even. And we're not doing a regular wall anymore. We're using the steel slats like they do in various places in Texas, which I think is a better idea than just having a concrete wall. Definitely it's going to be a lot less maintenance. Because especially when you get over to places like California, in earthquake country,
Yeah.
a concrete wall is just, it's not feasible for border security.
Yeah, no. No, that wall will crumble the first 5.2 earthquake they have.
But where was I going with this? I was going somewhere with this. I don't remember where I was going with that. This is great quality production right here, folks.
It's fine.
Well, and I think there was a part of the, the shutdown, obviously. Trump was going out and he was making the concessions. He brought the number down as far as he could with still being able to get something done. And they just kept saying, no, we're not going to do anything with this, especially when Democrats took control back over on the House. Furthermore, he was the first one to offer up what they should have been asking for right from the beginning of it. Okay, you want this money, then give us, well, not amnesty, obviously, but give us an extension on DACA because they don't actually want these people to be citizens. Give us an option on DACA, give us something or other. And he's just sitting there offering it, and they're still continuing to sit there and say no. And there's a part of this, I think they're trying to rob Trump of the victory that he would have on this. Pelosi and Schumer both have advocated to have a physical barrier on the southern border when it was politically expedient for them. They're both on record for that. And people's minds can change, but from the further point of this, what's something that you notice as we go through every campaign, every year, year after year? The topics don't ever really change.
No.
So in order for something to, or not in order for, but if something were to actually get done, that takes away a campaign talking point that they could potentially use to potentially perpetually get reelected over and over again. I think that's a big part of the reason that they're trying to stop this. Because the American people, I don't know if you saw the GoFundMe or not. There was a GoFundMe that was formed by I think it was an Army vet, a paraplegic Army vet, that the people could sign on to and put money forward to fund the wall privately. I don't know how you would get the money past the Appropriations Committee in the Congress in order to make sure it gets earmarked for the wall, but the citizens of America put $14 million into this GoFundMe in the first couple days that it happened. So the American people are willing to pay for this. They want the wall, and obviously, yes, we were promised that Mexico would pay for it. That's been the talking point that Pelosi keeps saying. But the people of America are willing to pay for it because they want to see it get done.
Yeah.
And yet they still continue to sit there and say, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to touch it.
Yeah.
That's what I have on the wall. If you have any more commentary to that or what's going on with that. I saw your eyes get wide when I saw the $14 million in 2 days. That's
a lot of money. That's ridiculous.
Well, I talked about it on my show too. I mean, you've lived in Illinois your entire life, right?
My entire 36 years of living.
Okay. On our side of the border, and they actually took this off recently when we did our state tax returns. There was Ducks Unlimited charity. There was a line where you could donate to that. There were a couple other charities, and there was another line where you could take some of your income tax refund, or you could pay extra for it if you weren't getting anything back from the state government, and put it towards the Lambeau Field Fund. I actually put an old copy of a 2010 Wisconsin income tax return up on the screen when I was talking about that. If we could put something like that on the 1040 form from the federal government, I bet you that wall would be funded tomorrow.
Yeah.
That $5.7 billion would be gone like that, especially in tax time.
Yeah.
And that would be a way for us to earmark that money for what we wanted it to be, rather than the Appropriations Committee turning around and dumping it into Planned Parenthood.
Right.
Or giving another grant to California.
Yeah. That would be a really good idea. I think I don't do our taxes, Brian does, but I back in the day when I did do my taxes, I think we had something similar, like, do you want to donate to this or whatever? I'm sure they probably still have something similar.
They took it off ours recently, but yeah, I had to go clear back to 2010 before I could see a return that had it on there. But yeah, that's tax volunteerism is almost the way to go at this point. I think that's a part of the reason that so many people out there say taxation is theft, is because it goes to the federal government. We don't see it anymore, and then we have no say in where it goes. Whereas if we had some control over where it was going, I think a lot more people would be on board with that.
Right. If we could control the money we're paying out of our hard-earned money, say, you know what I mean? Like, okay, well, I want my tax money that you're taking out of my check every week to go towards this. I think people wouldn't be so mad. I agree with you.
Unfortunately, if we had full tax volunteerism, there would be no more money left for Planned Parenthood or nothing else going to fight the wildfires or whatever else happens in California.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people on the right that kind of want to see that state just fall off the face of the map at this point.
Well, see, if we don't help fight the wildfires, we'll just wipe that whole state out. That's horrible. My sister lives in California. Shouldn't be saying that kind of stuff.
Do I need to find the cut button?
Well, see, I'm just solving all the problems.
Well, that's all I have. Do you have anything else that you want to add to the end of this?
No, I think
Beyond that, of course.
I think I'm good.
Well, you've answered this question once before on this show, and I'd like to give you the opportunity because it's been a year and your life has changed. Before we leave tonight, why don't you tell us something that's going on in your life right now? I mean, you've talked about the fundraiser, but I'm going to give the challenge, and I'm going to say that you can't talk about that again. But tell us something non-political, non-work related, a hobby that you're into, maybe a new CD you've seen, maybe a video game you found, something completely non-political in your life right now. Let's end on a positive note.
My sweet husband bought me a Cricut cutter for Christmas, and you're probably like, what the is a Cricut cutter? Basically, I have a machine that my phone can hook up to, or I can hook it up to a computer, and it cuts out vinyl. It cuts out a lot of material, but I posted on Facebook the shirts I made for us to go to Disney on Ice, and I had Brian and Chase had Mickey Mouse shirts that said Daddy and Chase, and I had a Minnie Mouse shirt that said Mommy on it. I've been doing. Did you?
I think so.
Everyone's like, "Oh my God, it's so cute!" But yes, so I got this Cricut machine. I'm not sure if I talked about it the last time I was on. I like to find furniture and like decorate it and try to sell it for profit. Just a little side business. And with this Cricut machine, I'll be able to do like signs too. So I'll be able to cut the words out and then paint it on wood or whatever and make it all, shabby chic farmhouse look that everybody loves.
I've got this feeling I'm going to have a t-shirt with a spiraled globe on it in my near future.
Oh, there we go. Hey, I'm going to have to make that. Or we could make a nice little like frame for the behind you.
Yeah, I constantly get accosted for the fact that my studio isn't very well decorated, but as for the fact that I'm renting right now, you can't really put holes in the wall.
Yeah,
and
right.
I have a shelf I want to put up, but there's no real way to do it. But yes.
I mean, but what's with the Red Sox, man?
I lived in Boston for 2 years.
Well, that's all right. I mean, I could see a Packer flag behind you, but the Red Sox, come on.
I love the Boston Red Sox.
I'm just kidding. Yes, and I love the Chicago Bears, and we see how well that goes.
The Bears did very well this year.
I know. Thanks a lot, Cody Parkey.
I've talked about this with other alternative media figures too. I know Matt Christensen is really big into football, and he pays attention to the to our conference here because, in spite of the fact he lives in Montana, he is a major Minnesota Vikings fan.
Okay.
So yeah,
okay.
we've talked about how well the Vikings did this year, how well the Bears did, and he's very plugged into the our conference. So yeah, I'm amazed to see. I never thought I'd live the day to see the Bears not suck. Because I've been watching it for my entire adult life.
Yeah, the last time they didn't suck was 2011. They played the Packers and we lost the game. And the only reason I remember that is because I was bawling my eyes. It was like the last game to see who was going to go to the Super Bowl. And I cried. I cried for an hour. This time, though, I saw it happen and I couldn't breathe for like 5 minutes. When that football banged on all sides of that goalpost.
Maybe we'll need to get you a conversation with Matt Christensen because as a Vikings fan, he experiences that every single year.
Yeah.
The choke at the very last minute.
Yeah.
Well, I have got an hour and a half on the ticker right now. I know that we have some of this to cut out of this, but I think it's time for us to get the heck out of here.
Okay.
Again, for the audience here, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to tune in and watch Ed's World. Thanks for helping us welcome Emily on. I hope that she'll come back again. Keep in mind the fact, watch for the links that are coming up. This will be moving over to the audio format. We hope to see you back next week when I have a conversation with Robert from the Generational Gap, and please take the time to tune in as I appear on his live show right after he and I are done talking as well. I want to take the time to remind everybody, as I said earlier on in this show, never ever take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. In today's media, it's important that you find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Emily, you have last word.
Thanks for inviting me. And maybe next time I come on, I will know more politically to help you out with your show. Hopefully there won't be another shutdown, though. So
we'll see what happens in 3 weeks.
All right.
Take care, everyone.